All right, this is Prince, and we're coming to you from We Are Furry Mission, and this is Building Your Brand by Scratch, Project Team 2, starring me and Amanda Dean. Introduction. So, first we need to put some context. What is the furry fandom? So, furry is an internet colloquialism for a group of people who have an interest in anthropomorphic animal characters. Examples of these characters appear in Zootopia, Robin Hood, Bakemono no Ko, and the webcomic Two Kinds. There is a very big artistic community in this fandom, with artists who can specialize in anything from fan workings to comic books, illustrations, and making their own universes in themselves. What we would like to do is create an app that caters to these artistic audiences to make it easier for them to commission and connect, or pretty much become closer to these consumer communities who want to see more of their work, buy their work, and possibly follow them as their careers as artists continue. So, our personal inspiration when coming up with our ideas, both being members of this community, we knew that we wanted to find a way to get other artists' names out there who may not be able, or at least don't have the time, to get their names out there as quickly as others who may spend days upon days of making things. So, and as such, this made commission work or art trade work or connecting with your audience in general really difficult because it's very disjointed, it's very impersonal, and it's hard to kind of bring these two ideas together in a way that won't end up being so sketchy. So our idea is to create a commission-based app to connect the furry community with artists and consumers who would like to commission these artists in a more interpersonal and connected way. Kind of similar to growing a following, but also that quality versus quantity, and how to really get that fan base and support system that's actually there for them. So, our professional inspiration, apps and sites that had inspired us included Fur Affinity, DeviantArt, Etsy, Furby, Weasel, and many different Tumblr and multiple different art-based communities that have bits and pieces of what we're looking for, but not in a very well-structured system that is well managed, well supported, and can stay alive for a long period of time. And in all of these places do come from previous usage, as well as plenty of research and seeing that there are successful artists in these locations who have gained a following through generally consistent uploads, well-placed advertising, and other possible connections to other successful artists. This is kind of a problem, though, when you realize that a lot of these sites tend to be very exclusive, and not so much in that you can't just join and do what you like. It's more of the idea that usually you need to pay money, or it's not as exclusive to the community that you would like to enter. And sometimes they don't even have a very well-defined system of how to do these kind of commission-based productions. For example, DeviantArt, while it's probably the most popular out of all the sites that I've listed, it's a little bit too big and has way too many exclusive groups that you can't really get a wide range of different people to come into the idea of what we're trying to do. Also, as a site, it doesn't exactly let you get paid money. Instead, it pays you points that are used on the site itself, so you are a bit limited in the range that you could use it for. Say if you had money, you could instead choose to buy those points or use it for something else, like some people I know do commission work specifically just because it puts food on the table or it pays bills. Then you have sites like Fur Affinity, which is a specifically general furry-based site and is probably the most popular of these kinds of sites, and it has a much more inclusive community due to kind of it knowing what its audience is. But the problem comes from Similarly, the sheer size, the idea that there is just as much what we could define as sophomoric art to those who want to go professional. So it's fairly unbalanced and skewed in the direction that it wants to go. And unlike DeviantArt, when it comes to commission works, there's not exactly a well-placed structured system to make things go swimmingly. So there are plenty of artists who may waste their time for someone who's not going to pay, or vice versa, a consumer who paid but is not getting what they paid for. Then there's Etsy, which in itself is a commission-based site where people can create personal stores to cater to a specific audience, and they even search based on specific products that people are looking for. However, it kind of limits the personality and connections given between the artists and consumers, and gaining validation is very difficult compared to other sites because you don't really have that much of a gigantic gallery to show off and connect, not exactly connect, but communicate with those who want to know more about what you do. And kind of like DeviantArt, it's not exclusive to the furry community, which is what we are aiming at. So from a pestle analysis, we are looking at all of the issues that we would possibly have, such as taxing issues in different countries, especially when you think about differences in currencies such as the dollar, the euro, the yen, etc., and that they all have different price ranges, as well as how to just keep it stable in all of these different areas, especially, well, we'll talk about more of that later. Then economical, we have things like the recession, unemployment rate, the national income, development, and donations, which aren't all exactly problems or hindrances, but it can add to the main issue itself as to why some people end up being more successful than others, especially when it comes down to the idea that people don't have the time or the skill to work on what they'd like to work on. So we would like to grow that audience quickly. Then we have social preferences, such as cultural differences per country, demographics, especially when focusing on the differences between adults, teens, and kids, especially since art can tend to be very different depending on the audience targeted. Trends, which often include what makes people popular in the first place and how trends change constantly and people have to keep up. Competing websites and apps, which we've just discussed, and language barriers. How can an artist from a different country communicate with someone from another country who doesn't speak their language? Technological issues include pretty much web-based free competition and advertising, which is very difficult because a lot of sites you have to pay money if you want your ads on, say, the front page, or like buying attention from bigger groups. Computer engineering and coding, which would mean that we'd have to pay a team of people to create this app and keep it going. Marketing capability. So is it possible to keep this running even after everything is gathered and said and done? Innovation and new technologies, which means we will have to update and create new aspects to this as technology evolves, which means we would have to definitely spend more money on that, and making revenue would be extremely difficult. And electronic payments, since you can't really, since commissions generally happen online, it's harder to meet people in person to pay them with, say, cash or like a check. But electronic payments such as PayPal or Square Pay is generally what people use nowadays to get the payment that they need. And then for legal problems, there are working permits, worker and employee laws in different countries, especially if we want to have this app take place in all of these different countries. We need people to translate and update the translations as more things happen. Visa policies for employees, service safety, private policy, and taxes, which all skew from state to state. So our first step in our market research was surveying a community. And due to the relative small size of the nearby community and who we kind of have to go out and talk to, time that we were allotted, we did have to skew our samples to mere 5 people, which, while very, very meager results, we were able to get plenty of information that was beneficial to what we were looking for and the questions we were asking. The information we did get specifically differed from artists of different backgrounds who either made illustrations to those who made suits, fursuits that people set up and walk around and costume play in, and writers who write their own stories. We did find it intriguing that our biggest complaint / desire from our surveyors did help validate our original desire, which was this desire to have a bigger community, especially when people don't have as much time to work on the things they'd like to work on when they have to do other things like school or job or making money or multiple jobs or taking care of family. So it's always this personal situation that does make this difficult and what we would like to try to solve. So let's just say what the problem is. Our problem that we would like to examine, or that we did examine, no doubt, was how can we help expand young unseen artists to grow into a larger community? And we know this wasn't going to be an easy thing to do, especially when most unknown artists don't have the funds for some kind of big brand advertising or did not have connections to get these massive flood of people on the front pages. Most sites' front page do show recent work, but because they show up for an average of about 12 seconds, and because of how many people are uploading pieces at a staggering rate, there's not enough time for a person to get their name out there very quickly, especially when they're new to the entire thing. Like, say, the difference between someone who had been working for a few years to someone who had maybe made their account a few months ago. Our other question was, how can we use our sources and competitors to benefit us? For example, how can we use Fur Affinity as an advantage without making it seem like we're trying to take them over? We could use them as an advertising pool and even have the same starting base pool that they have to help integrate both together. Instead of creating a competitor versus competitor competition, we're creating something similar to Nike and JJ, which was helping one brand grow a little bit bigger without taking anything away from you. This means that we guarantee ourselves a user base if this connection works out, because our goal before this app is released is to have a base of people who would want to use an app like this in the first place. Onto our blue ocean strategy and kind of our idea of what kind of ocean we're looking at. Due to the size and the difficulty of gaining a reputation as an artist, there's already a distinct challenge with garnering media attention for artists that need it, who are limited by funds. But because of this furry community's openness, it can be easier to advertise to other furries compared to advertising to a general audience with multiple preferences, which can include an aversion to the community itself. And this is due, in fact, to how in a lot of media, such as Law and Order or Fox News, the furry community is often stigmatized for being a very alternative group. I mean, think about it. A lot of people will look at this group and be like, wow, those people just want to do strange things with animals, and that's not exactly true. That's something completely different, and the community has more of an interest in the style of anthropomorphism and not really anything more. And I find it ironic that seeing as Disney and other professional animation groups generally embrace the style and community, so it's kind of a strange paradigm to think about and look at. Now, while this ocean is vast, it is prone to many maelstroms because of this stigmatization in specific environments. So it is best to be cautious when approaching a certain group, but also we can take these negative encounters as an opportunity to grow and even grow our audience more by teaching them more about what the community is like, because it is a very warm, opening, and accepting community. So our service will likely be made easily accessible on the mobile phone and will ensure the safest and quickest transactions while helping to build relationships between artists and buyers to make them grow as a community where artists can show their work to other artists, buyers can show the artist's work to other buyers, and vice versa. And through that interaction, we can find learning opportunities to artists who may want to share their skills to others and who want to get their names out there through a mix of images, videos, audio, text, and even something like a Google Hangout. So, in light of our brand canvas, our key partners by our ideal standards were PayPal for electronic payment, Google because that's easy advertising, Apple and Samsung because we have to get the app somewhere, Square Cash as a means of more electronic payment, Furry, which would be a great place for ads, that, DeviantArt, Etsy, etc. Any of the places that we've chosen. Conventions, which is a way to not only meet a new community, but also to connect with people in real life without exactly having only meetings through the internet. We can create this personal physical connection. Then UPS, FedEx, and etc. for shipping costs. So activities are tech in the app must be regularly updated because as technology changes, we have to keep up with it. Quality control community, which is a group who not only make sure that business structures and transactions are successful without exactly having scamming, which will be done by having one group hold on to each piece of the bargain until both are successfully traded, and if not, return them to their rightful owners. To keep everything personal and orderly so that everyone has the ability to connect by talking or communicating with whoever they want to chat with. And statistic tests to ensure that our app is being used and there's actually value to it and that what we're trying to do is actually being successful. Our key resources are going to be computers, mobile devices, and coders, people who are going to make the app for itself, economic experts so that we have an idea of where our revenue is going and how can we manage it, lawyers and campaigns, not only to get our names out there and advertise, but also in case there's ever a problem with scamming or something wrong, we have the right means to deal with it without being unprofessional. And artists who provide their art and talent for the service, which kind of goes back to the idea of creating pools who would like to share their work as even before the app is even done. So our value proposition are a safe, friendly, and communicative environment where we can grow and connect, as in be able to communicate, follow one another, advertise for each other without exactly needing all of the pay for this, pay for that, spending that it does take to get your name out there. So what we are kind of creating is almost a big advertisement for many different artists who would like their names out there. Then our customer relationships, we would have to acquire them through ads, collaborating with art sites such as DeviantArt and Furry, music sites such as Spotify and Pandora, and video sites such as YouTube. How we would retain them is to encourage the use and support of an open community so that if every transaction is successful and there aren't flaws in the business structure itself, then people will be able to use it trustingly. And that's our goal for keeping these people there. As for development, we would offer suggestions to widen our user base, such as a comment section or a support section or a Q&A that we would regularly answer to make sure that everything is working fine. Our main channels would be the internet, obviously, artists who want to share their work, and payment partners to ensure healthy transactions. Because of the small size of audience in our customer segments, business to consumer is the most simple and direct route. Businesses are individual artists, and buyers are the artist's followers or watchers who support and follow the artist inside of this community. And the cost structure depends on deals with many key partners to get it on the App Store. So as earlier said, with Apple and Samsung, we would need to hire people to build and manage the app. We would need money for placing ads online and in print, especially with these partners that we would like to acquire, and shipping costs, though this could be done through artist and consumer business as opposed to us. But that's really depends on how the business structure is further developed as we test the app more. Revenue streams would come from our ad revenue. Possibly we could take from artists, even though we personally don't believe in the idea. Donations would be fantastic, especially from those who support what the app is for and what it does, and help from business partners through our collaborative efforts. Hold on a moment, computer charger. All right, now that's all taken care of. Next, our identity and design. So we found that our vision statement is to be the best commission service for the furry community with a strong, open relationship between artists and consumers. And by that, we do mean that artists and consumers are able to communicate successfully and coherently with one another, get what they would like out of each interaction, and support one another. Our mission statement is to create an open space for artists to sell their craft and consumers to have confidence in their investments through communication and fairness, which means as a business, we would like every transaction to be successful, and we will build the structure to make sure that that is done. And our main core values are respect, fun, integrity, community, quality, consideration, and being open. As for our logo design, our ideas really focused on the idea of the artist and the community. So we did choose the idea of some kind of handshaking symbol and a heart in the idea that this is what kind of community we're trying to build. As for our SWOT and TWO systems, our strengths are definitely our focus on community and relationship between buyer and artist, and the focus on a safe environment for transactions. Our weakness, however, would be the small audience, the stigmatism behind this audience, and it's hard to keep track of an artist to buyer ratio, which is something we'll have to keep an eye on, because we don't want more artists than there are consumers, because then we're right back to square one. Based on hope that people, and we want to base a lot of things that people can connect on their own and kind of can work together as opposed to fearing communication. And while we can't exactly control every individual person, we can definitely make it easier by having some kind of structured system set up from the beginning. Our opportunities are to reach out to the target audience and help make it a larger part of the population, as mostly earlier said, due to the stigmatism of media attention to the furry community. It has been a very silent community, but as years have gone on, it definitely has become a lot more wide accepted, mostly because people are starting to understand what it means. But there's still plenty of people, thanks Fox, who do find the community to be a plague on humanity. And we would like to encourage the openness and interaction between buyers and artists, which is pretty hard to do when buyers only really go to only a few artists as opposed to expanding that, and artists have a hard time getting their names out there due to the difficulty of it, and pretty much how, as the internet has grown, it's gone from a more supportive, help the little guy out to a dog-eat-dog kind of philosophy. And because of that philosophy, our threats can be our competitors and even business partners, as well as just environmental issues in itself. So, feedback and what we've learned. Throughout our process, much of our feedback was related to what the app must do extremely well to be successful, which we believe our app must be able to be accessible to artists of all skill levels, And by that, we do mean get the people who are not big artists on these other sites need to have some kind of way to either have their audience diluted or have some kind of support system for those who either look up to them or would like to be on the same level. We'd like to create a fairness in the environment. So there will be some limitations and setbacks to what people can do. Second, it must have a simple yet effective business interface. And this is just straightforward. It must be a widely acceptable and trustworthy business structure, as we are only a mediator between artists and consumers, and the structure must be fair and prevent scamming, which, kind of like I earlier said, we may have to hold on to each piece of the bargain until each part is successfully completed. Number 4 is create an experience that keeps artists and consumers returning to one another as they create connections and expand the community from artist to artist and consumer to consumer. So our goal is to have artists help one another as opposed to having this dog-eat-dog kind of personality. Lastly, we must have an audience before we launch the app, which can be done with partnering with competitive sites like Furry, Furry, and DeviantArt, where the community is already there, but the wider audience just has not been accessed by many artists yet. So in conclusion, being members of our target audience, we did find our passions really shine through when we realized as a community, artists share the trouble of garnering audiences and the attention that they deserve for the work they put into everything they do. And we realized that with this struggle, not many people have gone out of their way to help solve this issue, but instead have just been trying to keep themselves alive. And I'm not complaining that this is a selfish thing, as everybody does want to be successful, but it's getting a lot harder for one person to help millions of other people who are all trying to do the same thing. With this, creating our brand and identity was how we can take our passion for a wider audience and help create a more engaged community. And we, of course, are a group that would like to receive profit. However, we do believe that the people who do deserve our help are those who want to be seen for their work and talent. And a person is not, and finally, we have learned, or what we do realize is that a community is not defined by how many followers or fans they have, but how much they are willing to try, put themselves out there, and actually do genuine hard work. So, kind of in a quick wrap up, I would like to say that as a community, I do hope that with this, we can create a more supportive nature as opposed to a competitive one. Because as the internet and online things and electronic engagement has grown, it has become a lot more exclusive, diluted, and silent because of who is on the top first and the top dog trying to keep that top dog position. And like I said, it's not that trying to keep that is a bad thing, but it's getting harder for them who originally did want to help people out to keep themselves just as equally alive. So that is our furry mission, and this is our business brand from scratch. Thank you.